Hello everyone, today I am going to have a session on the load forecasting. So, I am Dr. Guru Karthik Babu, Associate Professor, EEE Department of Kamaraj College of Engineering and Technology, Virudhunagar, India. So, today we are going to have a course on the power system operation and control, in which we are going to have a session on the load forecasting. So, first of all, what do you mean by forecasting? Forecasting is nothing but seeing the future trends in the present one. So, this is what about the term which percolates the meaning of forecasting. So, load forecasting means which is going to determine the futuristic load in the present scenario. So, first of all, we are going to have a introduction on the load forecasting. Load forecasting is nothing but the process to predict the future demand in order to have the past data. So, in this we are going to have a tabulation which deals with the nature of the load which having the application. There are three types of load, as I said earlier. So, very short term load, medium term and long term load. So, in this the very short term and short term is going to merge together and have a common word as short term forecasting, and then it is supposed to be the medium term forecasting and long term forecasting. So, in this the very short term forecasting which is going to deal with the very few seconds to the several minutes, in which the short term which is going to deal with half an hour to the 2 hours, medium term which is going to deal with the very few days to the very few weeks, whereas the long term is going to deal with the very few months to very few years. So, in this the application is going to begin this way. Very short term is going to deal with the generation and distribution, whereas short term which is going to deal with the spinning reserve, whereas the medium term which is going to deal with the seasonal peak, where my long term is going to deal with the generational growth and plant expansion. Here I am going to have a various methodologies and techniques which is going to deal with the load forecasting. First of all, what are all the methodologies? Second, what are all the techniques? So, in which the methodologies is going to begin this way. First one, extrapolation, then correlation, and third supposed to be both a combination of your extrapolation and correlation. In this, the extrapolation which is going to deal with the term extra, which is going to have a key word in it, right? Extrapolation, that which the extrapolation which is going to deal with the other terminologies which is going to dealt in the another way, that is supposed to be extrapolation, whereas my correlation which is going to deal with the correlation of my input and output. So, whereas the combination which is going to deal with the both the combination, and that is supposed to be my extrapolation and correlation. What are all the techniques is going to deal with this means deterministic and stochastic. The stochastic which is otherwise coined as probabilistic. The probabilistic which is going to deal with the two possible cases, one supposed to be happens or not happens. Extrapolation, the extrapolation which is going to deal by means of fitting the trend curves. The fitting trend curves is going to by means which extra straight line, parabolic curve, S curve, exponential curve and Gempert's curve. So, which is going to have a extrapolation coined by the terms of the historical data. Here the coefficients and exponents are to be determined by the least square methodology. What are all the importance which is going to have the load forecasting in the deregulated market? There are plenty of importance which is going to have its importance over which the deregulated market. As we all know that, what do you mean by deregulation? Means the deregulation which is going to deal in all other possible cases of the private entities which is going to involved in the private or multiple entities which is going to have in the electricity market, and thereby the term deregulation which is going to evolve slowly. The importance which is going to begin this way: first of all, purchasing, generation, bidding and contracts, load switching, area planning, infrastructural development or capital expenditure based on the decision making. Here comes to my cup. So, types of forecasting, as I said earlier, it is a short term forecasting which is going to have the common terminology, medium forecasting and long term forecasting. Then what are all the factors which is going to influence my forecasting? My forecasting is going to influenced by three main factors. The first factor is weather influence. The weather might be the very first influential factor for the load forecasting. Second, time factors. There are plenty of time factor which is going to determine your accurate forecasting. And third, customer classes. There are plenty of classification which is based upon this customer and its requirements. So, weather influence, based upon the following points, the weather might be get influenced over the electrical load, and thereby its direct correlation or indirect correlation which is going to influence my load forecasting. So, first of all, dew point, dry or wet bulb temperature, humidity, wind speed, sky cover and sunshine. The time factors, there are plenty of factors which is going to involved in this forecasting based upon day of the week, which is weekend or week starting, it might be get influential over this. Second, hour of the day, which is going to have a main role, since so peak hour which having a more demand than the normal hours, and the foremost thing is going to be a holiday or vacational thing is going to influence more on the load forecasting. Customer classes, based upon which industrial customer, residential customers are non-entity customers, non-profitable customers. There are plenty of customers which just comes into the category of your customer classes. It might be getting influenced over residential, commercial or by industrial influences. Based upon that, the peak load is getting influenced and thereby load forecasting is getting influenced. It is a simple load curve which depicts the residential, commercial and industrial loads. So, in which the residential load is going to increases exponentially based upon the R, and thereby which is going to getting its trend reduced by the exponential, thereby with respect to the hours. Then commercial also, which is having a similar pattern which regards with the residential, and thereby the commercial is getting more influence in the day hours rather than the night hours. Industrial, based upon that industrial working hours which is getting influence, as all we know that there are plenty of industries which is running to 24/7, and there are plenty of industries which is running at very small scale or medium scale industries which is going to run in the day hour itself, not than the night hour. So, mathematical methodology, there are plenty of mathematical methodology which is going to deal with this. So, first of all, regression models, second supposed to be similar day approach, then third statistical learning models, and fourth neural networks. So, here we are going to have some research orientation based upon this load forecasting. So, our team is going to deal with some load forecasting over which the statistical learning methodology which is applicable for your long term forecasting, whereas my short term forecasting which lies in the range of 48 hours ahead. So, this is what about my long term forecasting is going to begin this way. So, as I said earlier, long term forecasting means it is going to begin by the few months to few years. So, here the annual peak load is the main crux factor which is going to determine the area planning. Here there are plenty of model description which is going to influence this long term forecasting. First of all, weather parameters. The weather parameter is included by terms of temperature, humidity, sky cover, wind speed, sunshine, and which is not nevertheless which is going to end with which way. So, day or night or which is going to begin in any weekdays. So, this is a mathematical modeling which describes your long term forecasting methodology. L of t is begin this way. So, which is the daily or hourly component or which is going to determine the weather factor and the random errors. So, here the regression model is going to depict by terminologies of the beta, whereas it is a non-linear data and thereby which influence your weather condition or weather during the last hours or last days. Computational results, there are plenty of computational results just available for this long term forecasting. First of all, scatter plot, the plot which is going to scattered all over the plot cover area. Second supposed to be correlation, the correlation which is going to begin a relation which is between your actual load and the model or mathematical deduce or simulated results. R square value which is going to be again the which is deviation between your actual load and the model, and normalized distance between your actual load and the model values. The scatter plot which is going to have a clear discussion over the actual versus model. The actual versus model which is going to be lies one over the another, that depicts the model is a perfect one. Weather normalized load profile which is based upon some 6 days. What happens when I am going for Sunday, when I am going for Monday, when I am going for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday and Friday to Saturday. The Saturday or the Sunday which follows a similar pattern, more or less follows the similar pattern since it is a weekend, whereas my working days is going to begin by 5 patterns which is more or less lies in the similar pattern. This is what about my actual load profile which is going to combine with the traditional methodology. The correlation between your actual and model based upon the iteration which depicts a normalized value lies in the range of 0.97 to 0.99. Based upon the increasing your iteration, the trend is getting a normalized over a period of time. R square value, here the R square value is going to going to have a convergence value over the second iteration itself rather than the traditional one. Here the normalized distance between your actual load and the model is going to begin in the iteration of 5 to 10, and thereby the normalized distance is getting covered. Here short term forecasting, which is going to up to the 48 hours, and thereby which is getting influenced. Here the short term forecasting, which is lies in the more or less same pattern for all throughout considering days for the short term forecasting. So here another corollary which is going to have a discussion, that's supposed to be reactive load forecasting. This reactive load forecasting, which is nevertheless going to be a predictable one, but in the researchers we are going to have some traditional overcoming over this proposed one. Here the reactive loads are not at all easier to forecasting, and based upon the past data we can't predict all those things, but the load variation are by using some conventional methodologies we are not going to predict this. So by predicting some P or power factor or by some computational methodology, this reactive load forecasting is also possible through by means of some work compensating devices, and thereby the scheduling has to be done. So I am going to have a recap now. So today we are going to have the session on the load forecasting, definition, types of load forecasting in which very short term, medium term, long term, and finally we are going to have a discussion on the reactive forecasting. So thanks for watching my entire videos. So if you had any queries means you please ping me. Thank you.